So we're not allowed to leave, right?
No, I'm going to use the hand.
Hey, Howard. Okay.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's begin together on page 142 in our prayer books.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom. Boachem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon, melech malachei hamelachim, hakadosh baruch hu, baruch hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shuvachem L'Shalom. Shuvachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom. We're so glad to be here together at Westchester Reform Temple under the tent for our Shabbat evening worship. I'm Rabbi Daniel Reeser. This is our student cantor, Isaac Sonnet Asor. We're joined also in the leadership of our service by our senior rabbi, Rabbi Jonathan Blake, and also by Pete Malinverni at the keyboard and by Jerome Morris on percussion. This particular Shabbat, we come together not just to have our weekly day of rest, not just to observe this special time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where the gates of heaven are open even wider than usual, but also this week we come together to pay honor and give gratitude to our civil servants who help make our lives possible, and also to pay our respects to all of those who were lost 20 years ago on the terror attacks of September 11th. In a few moments, we'll have opportunities to say more about each of those two occasions which bring us together this weekend. But before we do that, it would be appropriate to welcome Shabbat by kindling light. And this week, a young person in our congregation, Sam Meltz, I'm sorry, I almost called you Sam Riley. Your sister is Riley. Sam Meltz is going to be celebrating his bar mitzvah. We'd invite Sam and his family forward now to help us kindle these lights for Shabbat. Sam, Mazel Tov on your bar mitzvah. We hope that this weekend is a wonderful celebration, that you feel really accomplished of all that you've achieved. We'll be celebrating you throughout Shabbat. It's been said that different religious traditions each have their different spiritual strengths. Christianity, for example, is particularly good at conveying the idea of God's love. Buddhism is particularly good at responding to human suffering. And Judaism, unfortunately, is particularly good at confronting public catastrophes. Our history is littered with public catastrophes: the destruction of the first and second temples, the Babylonian exile, 2,000 years of diaspora, the Spanish Inquisition, countless pogroms, blood libels, and expulsions, the horror of the Holocaust. The list goes on and on. So accustomed are we Jews at confronting public catastrophe that we have marked off not one, but several days on our calendar for doing exactly that. Most notably, Tisha B'Av, our day for remembering communal disasters. This Shabbat, of course, is a time also for remembering communal disaster, a time not from the Jewish calendar, but rather from the American calendar. Tomorrow, unbelievably, we'll mark 20 years since the attacks of September 11th, 2001 at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and on United Airlines Flight 93. Nearly 3,000 innocent lives were taken that day, including people within our own congregational family. Another 6,000 people were injured, and the soul of our entire country, and indeed the whole world, was irreparably wounded. For better or for worse, when public catastrophe strikes, our Jewish tradition is replete with spiritual wisdom. In the immediate aftermath of the destruction of the first temple, a prophet named Jeremiah composed a book called Lamentations. It's a book that is full of raw pain, with descriptions of the gruesome scenes of horror that Jeremiah saw unfolding all around him as the temple was destroyed. And indeed, many Jewish congregations in the immediate aftermath of those terror attacks turned to the book of Lamentations to give voice to our collective feeling of shock, disbelief, horror, and anguish. And one of our tradition's most trenchant insights in the face of catastrophe is that even while time passes, even after 20 years have elapsed, the pain never really goes away. It only changes shape. Many centuries after Jeremiah wrote the book of Lamentations, later Jewish figures would revisit that catastrophe and write a book called Midrash Lamentations to express how their pain had changed in the centuries since the temple was first destroyed. And it is that later book from which we might find spiritual instruction on this 20th anniversary of 9/11. The authors of Midrash Lamentations imagined the following scene. They imagined God looking out over the ashes of a destroyed city of Jerusalem many years later. One by one in the Midrash, different biblical figures approach God to protest their dismay. One by one, Abraham and Joseph and Moses and others come forward to ask God how this could have happened, to lodge a complaint of injustice, to even ask that God carry out retribution. But despite the merit of each of these biblical figures and the merits of their arguments, God is not moved by any of them. It is not until after more than a dozen biblical figures show up that God is finally stirred by our matriarch, Rachel. Rachel comes before God and says, "It is not a cry of injustice with which I stand before you today. It is rather with a broken heart. It is with a cry of pain that Rachel stands before God, pain over the children who have been orphaned, a tear for the parents who've been left childless, with a sob for the siblings who have lost a brother or sister. Al eila ani bochia," Rachel says, "it is for these people that I weep." And at last, God's heart is finally stirred. On this 20th year since the terror attacks of September 11th, we might find ourselves feeling some mixture of all of these things. We might find ourselves transported back to the immediate shock and horror of 2001, like Jeremiah. We might find ourselves filled with righteous indignation, like Abraham, Joseph, and Moses. But I know that for my own self, I awoke this morning feeling much as our matriarch Rachel does, feeling the pain of loss, saddened by relationships cut short, grieving for all those whose anniversaries, birthdays, and other special occasions never came to be, filled with our collective grief. Al eila ani bochia, it is for these that I weep. We'd like to take a moment now to light a candle of remembrance, and to help us do so, I'd invite forward Daniel and Andrew Kerwin, whose brother, Glenn Davis Kerwin, was a member of this congregation and who was killed in the attacks at the World Trade Center on September 11th. Let's observe a moment of silence now in memory of those whose lives were taken. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq. These lights that we kindle in memory of the righteous whose lives were ended too soon. Page 130.
Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Shimecha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Uleyishrei lev, Simcha.
Page 138.
Ya la 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 lecha dodi, Ya la 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 likrat kala, Ya la 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 pnei Shabbat, pnei Shabbat nekabela, Ya la 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 lecha dodi, Ya la 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 likrat kala, Ya la 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 b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'diborecha, Ishmiyanu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad, ushmo echad, leshem ultiferet velithilah. Ya la 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 lecha dodi, Ya la 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 likrat kala, Ya la 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 b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha, ki mekor haberacha, merosh miketz ותחילה לך דודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי שדברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת כלה
Please rise.
פני שבת
We face the setting sun.
פני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה.
We remain standing as we turn to page 146 for our call to prayer.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vahed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Page 148. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, our eternal God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being. Our tradition is one that is attuned to changes in time, to the come of evening, to the arrival of morning, to the cycle of winter and spring and summer and fall. We recognize not only changes in time, but extrapolate from that we ourselves can change. And that is the basic meaning of this High Holy Day season. We come together for 40 days in order to offer prayers, in order to work our way through complex liturgies and read through complicated Torah portions, in order to affirm one single truth. The world changes, and so can we. And so we say in the words of our prayer book, Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, our eternal God, who causes evening to fall and who allows us a season of change. Amen. Page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
We may be seated. Page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We'll continue on page 158 with our people's Song of Freedom, Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Nohora Tehilot Oseh Veleh Nohora Tehilot Oseh Veleh Malechutecha Ahuvanecha Pokea yam lifnei Moshe uMiriam Zeili anu ve'ameru Adonai yimlo leolam va'ed Adonai yimlo leolam va'ed. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Shabbat Shalom. It's very nice for me to be able to greet you on this Shabbat in such a beautiful setting. And once again, there are not enough words to express appreciation to the team of staff and volunteers who have helped make these High Holy Days possible at WRT in these innovative and inclusive ways. So we're so grateful to our entire team of staff and volunteers at the temple. I wear many hats, of course, as Rabbi of Westchester Reform Temple. That's one yarmulke. But another that I am particularly honored to wear is that I serve as a co-chaplain of the Scarsdale Police and Fire Departments with my friend and colleague, Reverend Kelly Huff-Rogers, the senior minister of Scarsdale Congregational Church, just down on Heathcote Road as you're approaching the village. And together we have come to know some of the leaders in our community who are entrusted with our safety. And when I tell you that we as a community are so blessed by our many civil servants, those who serve and defend and protect in our law enforcement, fire, emergency medical services departments truly are a blessing to our Scarsdale and Westchester community. And we are so grateful. A number of you are here this evening, and on this solemn evening before the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we wished as a community to express our appreciation to you. I know that our civil servants often stay out of the spotlight because their work is quietly, without drawing attention to themselves, to serve others. And yet, I hope that for the sake of our community's ability to lay eyes on you and give you their thanks, we could ask at this time for all who work in law enforcement, and I'd like to include especially as well those who serve as part of the security team of Westchester Reform Temple, most of whom are former law enforcement themselves, together with those who serve in our fire department and our emergency medical services, to come right now and stand in front of the congregation. I promise to make this as non-embarrassing as possible, so I will come down and join you for a few comments. And will the congregation please rise? Thank you. Great. Put you right here. Perfect. Thank you so much. So because we are about to enter into a moment of prayer, first I would like to express the appreciation of your Westchester Reform Temple family. And we do think of ourselves as a congregational family, one who would never take for granted, not for a moment, that our safety is due to the hard work and the incredible dedication of you. You're also standing not in front only of a live in-person congregation, but we are live streaming, and we've had many worshipers joining us every Shabbat, and particularly tonight, knowing that we would be recognizing you. Will you please join me in a moment of appreciation for our civil servants? We know that for each of you standing here, there are so many others who are out there right now in the field. In fact, I was requested by somebody I'm very close to. I didn't take this as anything other than face value kind of request, but he said, look, could we do this early in the service? Because I've got people in the field and they need to get back to work tonight. So we know that the Lord may take a Sabbath, but our civil servants do not. We're grateful to all of you for your tireless efforts. I'm going to invite us with you and our congregation to offer these words of prayer. Author of life, shield of all the living, as we gather here on this evening of the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of 9/11, help us, eternal God, to be your stewards of understanding, peace, and love. Bless, O God, these civil servants who selflessly protect, defend, and work tirelessly on behalf of our community. Keep them safe, O God, even as they endeavor to keep others safe. Strengthen the work of their hands. Sustain them in life as they give of themselves to the lives of others. As a new generation grows up under the shadow of our great and lingering trauma, help us to remember what we must teach them now, 20 years after 9/11, that love must prevail over hate, courage over fear, goodwill over meanness of spirit, self-sacrificing service over selfishness, knowledge over ignorance, and unity over division. Let not those who were taken from us 20 years ago, let not those who gave their lives to save life, let not those whose heroism is recalled for good today have died in vain. Bless especially, God, those first responders who have gone to their eternal rest, working to save others. Let us lift up the memories of all the fallen, so that a new generation will join us in building a better world, a world worthy of God's presence, a world befitting your blessing. And let us all say, Amen. As I invite our civil servants to take your seats or to return to your work, we thank you again, and we're going to pray together the words of Hashkivenu on page 160. These words of prayer invite God to keep us safe from harm, and they refer to God with the phrase, Hapores Sukat Shalom, God as the one who stretches out over us a tent of peace. I look at us dwelling all together under this Sukat Shalom, this sacred tent of peace, and I know that it is so because of you. We're so, so grateful. Thank you. Thank you and bless you. Congregation may be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. We continue on page 164 with the Amidah. You may rise if you are able to do so. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha.
As we enter our tefillah, beginning on page 166, I'll invite us to the special small print insertions. This is the one Sabbath of the year when they are recited. So you'll see toward the end of the Avot V'Imachot prayer on 166, and similarly toward the end of the Givurot prayer on page 168, a special recitation is included, inviting God to see us all inscribed for life in the book of life, as is traditionally invoked at this season. 166, we pray together.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, u'mevii gula livnei bneihem, leman shemo be'ahava. Zochreinu lechaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chotveinu b'sefer hachayim, lemancha Elohim chayim. Melech ozer Moshiach u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב והושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומיתו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, לחיים ברחמים. ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך הקדוש.
You're welcome to keep praying at your own pace, in your own language, and in whatever position, either standing or sitting, is most prayerful for you. We pray silently.
We continue with these words from the book of Isaiah. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elohechem. Take comfort, my people, says your God. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elohechem, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle to take care of one another. Comfort us Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem.
Before we enter into the concluding portion of our service tonight, I'm going to come down to be among the people because it's only the third day of a new year and already your rabbi owes you an apology. To some of the congregation on Rosh Hashanah, I had invited you to come tonight for a kind of interactive talkback on my Rosh Hashanah remarks. But I've changed my mind that tonight is not the right night to do that. And I'll tell you a few reasons why, just so you understand that it's not because I'm afraid to stand in front of a firing squad. I actually know that you're all really nice people. One, we haven't had enough time in the multi-compartmental configuration of our congregation on the holidays to make sure that everyone who would want to has either heard or read the remarks, which I understand, being on the subject of Israel and our relationship with Israel and its complexities, ought to provoke a good conversation. That's certainly the intent. Secondly, we want to be able to do it at a time and in a format where we can include some of the high school, college, and post-college students who have been most directly affected by the explosion of challenging social media and public demonstrations about Israel. They're actually on the front lines of this conversation. I would like them to participate as well. So we'll be looking for a time. There's no shortage of opportunities for Jewish people to gather over the next month or so. We'll look for a time to have a constructive conversation. It may take place online so that we can enlarge the congregation. I'm going to give you some homework tonight, though, that will continue through the High Holy Days and should enhance your perspective and is intended to be homework that is a complement, that's with an E, to my remarks. Just a couple of days ago, a member of the Knesset, Mr. Nachman Shai, whom I've actually met, and I got the wonderful opportunity to interview him as part of a panel discussion at the AIPAC Policy Conference a few years ago. Minister Shai is now in the governing coalition in the Knesset, so he's part of the majority government in Israel, and he is the new Minister for Diaspora Affairs. And he penned an article that was published by the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, and gratitude to Tim, who ran off copies at the last minute tonight so that there will be one for everyone who wants to take before you leave. He speaks of the importance of speaking about Israel in American congregations in order to renew what he acknowledges is a strained and even at times strangulated relationship. So he is really looking for opportunities for us to do some loving but difficult truth-talking between the American Jewish community and the Israeli community. I found the article extremely heartening, and really for the first time I saw an Israeli public official saying, we know that as an Israeli society, we have issues to work on, and our relationship with American Jewry, with non-Israeli Jewry, matters. And so that's what I wanted you to read, because I think without that, you don't get the full picture. And it also was a heartening piece in that it promises that we need not be at odds with our Israeli brothers and sisters. So I offer you my apology for the change in message. I am grateful in advance for your engagement with this important subject, and I'm really looking forward to not just a next month, but a next year in which WRT commits and recommits itself to our relationship with Israel. As I said, we will be looking for times to develop itineraries both for our teenagers to return to Israel as part of their high school senior experience. We're already looking at dates, and we have some incredible generosity from within the congregation that is making it possible to offer this trip heavily subsidized to any 12th grader who wants to come with their clergy to Israel through WRT. I'm so, so grateful. And then also, as I mentioned, we are hoping to assemble a large-scale congregational trip to Israel in 2023, again, sooner than you think, to celebrate WRT at 70, one of many ways in which we'll be celebrating our milestone year. So thank you and Shabbat Shalom. What we're going to do now is continue in the more solemn vein of tonight's service, which is reflective, being the Sabbath in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This is really a soulful Shabbat. It's named Shabbat Shuvah. It means the Sabbath of Return. The word Shuvah comes up in the prophetic selection that will be read as part of tomorrow's Haftarah. And it also describes the work of Teshuvah, the soul return that each of us must initiate and work on in order to get back to our spiritual bearings. Or as the Beatles once sang, get back to where you once belong, right? That's what this Sabbath is all about. We've all drifted. We've all moved away from our source. We all have at times in the last year not lived up to the values we profess to be the ones we cherish the most. So Shabbat Shuvah is intended to be a time to return to that. And I think the confluence of this particular soulful Shabbat with the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is particularly powerful and resonant. So let's be in this moment. And let's lift up either out loud or privately the names of loved ones for whom we'd like to pray for healing. In a moment, I'm going to invite you who wish to share a name aloud to stand and share your names. I have a number of names that our community is praying for tonight as well. And I also want to acknowledge this particular Friday evening. Just before I came to Temple tonight, I was listening to a piece on the lingering medical complications of first responders on 9/11. Many of them have suffered PTSD, many of them and other psychological trauma that has inhibited their ability to live their fullest lives and to work to their fullest. And of course, we know of many people who have suffered from respiratory ailments who were at ground zero at the time of just after the attacks. So keep them in your prayers tonight too. Of course, many first responders have also been added to the list of the victims of 9/11 at this point. Many have died from the respiratory ailments with which they were afflicted in their work in the days and weeks following the attacks. But for those who continue to live and who continue to suffer the debilitating effects, please pray for them as well tonight. And as well, if you'd like to share names of loved ones for healing, you may stand and share those names aloud at this time. We are also praying for Yitzchak Halevi ben Sholem, Elizabeth Hards, Avram ben Miriam, Sue Malinverney, Shana Bracha, Barbara Feldman, Eliyahu Mecha ben Sarah, Bob Zagoria, Tony and Gina DeLappa, Naomi Bat Moshe Esther, Mark Sosnowitz, Matthew Atwood, Stephen Bleckman, Andrew, Gloria Byron, Anthony and Elizabeth Danker, Mordechai ben Yaakov, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusi, Neil Glasgow, Leah Greenspan, Andrea Reiner, Masha Batsora, Aviva Tzila, Bat Esther Bela, Jeffrey Millman, Ken Master, Chava Batsara, Eliyahu Chaim Ben Fredel, Sheila Fried, Malka Tzipora Bas Rachel, Tamar Bat Malka, Heschel Meir Ben Davida Chana, Howard Cowan, and Rosa Aurora Ramirez Vera. Together with all whose names we have also quietly pronounced, we'll pray Misha Berach together. Join us on 371.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema. The renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Amen.
We rise for Aleinu 586.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We arrive at the moment in our service consecrated to the memories of those we love, people taken from us at this time of year in years gone by, and those whom we have recently laid to rest. I am also holding in my hand a folder that contains the typed names of every person killed in the terror attacks of 9/11. We will remember them as we acknowledge our own losses. I'd like to ask in the following order for the congregation of mourners and sympathizing fellow worshipers to rise. If you are within the first 7 days of having laid to rest your loved one, would you please rise at this time? Those who are within 30 days of memorial, please rise. If you are within a first year of remembering your loved one, would you please rise? And if you are observing a yahrzeit on this Shabbat, would you please rise? On this 20th anniversary of 9/11, and as sympathizing fellow congregants, would you please rise and help us remember? We name those taken most recently in the last 4 weeks: Richard Razumna, father of Daniel Razumna and Paul Razumna; Lucille Menon, wife of Dick Menon and mother of Donna Sherry and Jeffrey Menon; Nelson Salzman, husband of Renee Salzman and father of Joan Grant and Lori Morton; Patricia Lazarus, wife of Malcolm Lazarus; Morgan L. Miller, husband of Margie and father of Betsy, Bob, Amy, and Cindy Miller; Irving Markowitz, father of Steve Markowitz; and Lily K. Sorkin, mother of Larry Sorkin. And those whose yahrzeit we commemorate tonight: Edith Alper, Grace Babin, David Bauman, Margaret Klepner, Jody Burns, Selma Ross, Jay Block, Jenny Casper, David Dabro, Albert De Silva, Harry Fialk, Richard Fishman, Yetta Foreman, Esther Friedman, Abraham A. Geltzer, Sidney Godden, Lillian Goldfinger, Emmanuel Goldsmith, Neil Gorin, Samuel Katz, Elena Kaiser, Glenn Davis Kerwin, Carol Landsberg, Jeffrey Langsam, Emily Lasser, Sylvia Lieb, Hilda Magid, Dorothy Margolis, Sylvia Mechanic, Bernice Meyerson, Aura Milich, George Miller, Marjorie Blair Perkins, Theodore Perlmutter, Otakar J. Pollock, Annette Pollard, Abe Polsky, Stanley Rappaport, Martin Rayfel, Arthur Rylander, Henry Rogers, Neil Rosendorf, Lawrence Rosenstadt, Arthur Ross, Robert Rossano, Harold Isaac Seltzer, Albert Sipsener, Herman Slater, Abraham Sobel, Malcolm Stein, Betty Stern, Mark Stern, Sarah Sternman, David Strager, Sheldon Traeger, Leonard Udolph, Mae Wiesen, Dorothy Williams, Elaine Winnick, Kay Zalesnik, Ray Ziegler, Samuel Ziegler, Laura Zwiegel. If you have names to add to our commemoration, or if I've inadvertently mispronounced a loved one's name, kindly speak your names at this time. Tehi zichronam baruch, let the memory of all of our loved ones who have died, let all who perished on 9/11 continue to provide blessing in our lives and in our world, as we bless the author of life's name through the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, page 598, we say together, Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam alamei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen.
Just a couple of brief announcements. Obviously, this is an incredibly busy time of year, so most of the announcements that I would want you to follow should be followed through our electronic communications, either our weekly e-blast, which arrives straight to your inbox on Thursday mornings. You can sign up through the website. The website's the other place you can learn all about what's happening at WRT. We look forward to worshiping with you on the Day of Atonement. Our Kol Nidre services will be held at various times and locations on Wednesday evening, and of course all throughout the day on Yom Kippur. For the afternoon service of Yom Kippur, we will meet concurrently both in this tent and in the main sanctuary, and I'm pleased to announce that Rabbi Rick Jacobs will be offering remarks at both services, both indoors and out. So we hope to see you on the afternoon of Yom Kippur. If you haven't yet registered for your seats, please do so through the ticket registration process online, or you can tune in via our live stream to most of the main services that are being broadcast throughout the holy season. We also look forward to celebrating the Sukkot holiday with you the following week, so stay tuned for announcements about how, when, and where Sukkot will be joyously celebrated. And finally, please put a save the date on your calendar for the weekend of October 15th through the 17th, when we will, both at Friday night services at 6:15 and at a Sunday afternoon concert at 4 p.m., celebrate the installation of our assistant cantor, Danielle Rodnitsky. Now I know that most of you have had the chance to hear her in person, know how special she is and what incredible leadership she brings to our spiritual community. So please plan to celebrate her installation a year overdue. It would really mean a lot to have you all joyfully worshiping and singing along with us that weekend, October 15th. Finally, please bring your bags of food to the temple. You can do that on the day of Kol Nidre. So that's the 16th, all Wednesday. We look forward to filling up an entire truck for Feeding Westchester, who just dedicated, by the way, its first kosher pantry in Westchester County this morning. I was part of the dedication at 10 a.m. in New Rochelle. So we're very blessed to know that some of the Orthodox poor in our community, those who are observing Jewish dietary restrictions, will also not have to suffer food insufficiency. We're going to conclude by singing Oseh Shalom. Please join with us.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen.
Mazal Tov to Sam and the Meltz family. Shabbat Shalom. Your homework is up here in front of the Shabbat candles. It's one page with two sides. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.